What is going on, guys? I am Alejandro Mendoza, and this video is part 3 on my complete theory on what I think happened to the O2 digidestined. So if you haven't watched part 2 and part 1 yet, make sure to go watch both those videos first. I'll leave links to both of them down in the description below. But with that being said, let's get this video started. So before we get into obviously, Jesmon's rebellion against Yggdrasil and him trying to save the O2 cast, I quickly wanted to explain two things that I think need some explanation for them, or that could be confusing. And the first thing I want to explain is Yggdrasil's virus, because obviously during the last video I said that I believe that Yggdrasil would try to get want to get the O2 digidestined on his side, and the way he would do that would be by creating a virus that makes them subservient to him. But I didn't really explain the virus in detail too much, so that's what I'm going to do in this video. So obviously, Yggdrasil, like I said, wants the O2 cast to be on his side, as kind of like a secret weapon, against the original cast, since obviously the O2 cast are some of their closest friends, and if they had to fight against the original cast, the original cast would obviously have a hard time fighting against them, even though they had no problem killing Imperial Dramon in determination. You'd expect some hesitation, but there wasn't for some reason. What were the writers thinking right there? I don't know. That was just you would expect at least Kari or Tai to say are we sure about killing Imperial Dramon? But I don't know what the writers were doing. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about my theory. So where was I? Oh yeah, about Yggdrasil, using the O2 cast as a secret weapon against the original cast. So, obviously, the O2 digidestined, they obviously refused that, like I said in my last video. And Yggdrasil would obviously expect this, and he'd have a plan to get them to come to his side, whether that be by force or by them actually for some reason joining him. So it's obviously we do know that Yggdrasil is capable of creating viruses like that, because first off, he's a digital god, and secondly, we saw it in the Digimon X Evolution movie. And to quickly summarize the movie, the basic plot of it is that the digital world is getting too overpopulated. So Yggdrasil decided that to basically get rid of most of the population by releasing a program called the X program, which was meant to kill 98% of the digital population and leave 2% to survive. Now, obviously, some Digimon did develop an immunity to it, and they got the X antibody, like Alphamon did. But the main point of me bringing up that movie is just to show that Yggdrasil obviously is capable of making viruses that can obviously cause damage to Digimon and data in general. So he could obviously do something to the O2 cast and their Digimon, to try and make them subservient to him. And I think that the virus Yggdrasil would make to try and get them to join his side would be similar to Ken's Dark Spore, not completely like it, but similar to it in regards that it's something that you can fight in a sense, because obviously at the end of O2, after the battle with Malamayotismon, I'm pretty sure Jedi reveals that the Dark Spore in Ken it's still there, but that it's no longer affecting Ken, because he now no longer is in the darkness anymore, basically, and he believes in himself now. But if he should ever start doubting himself or falling back into the darkness, that the Dark Spore could return. So I feel that Yggdrasil's virus would be similar to that, where it's the digidestined can fight against it, but it's they have to obviously believe in themselves and have very strong wills to fight against it. But the main difference I see between the Dark Spore and Yggdrasil's virus would be that Yggdrasil's virus would be much more aggressive. I feel that Yggdrasil's virus would be kind of it would be like injected with like Yggdrasil's will, you know, like it would be like kind of like Yggdrasil's will, like trying to overtake like each of the digidestined and their Digimon, like, you know, just trying to like override their consciousness and like, you know, make them subservient to him. And I feel it would be much more aggressive too. Like it wouldn't just like immediately stop, like, you know, after the digidestined, like, you know, after they have strong enough foes, like it would just like keep coming back and keep trying to, like, you know, overtake them. So there's so that's what I wanted to address about the virus. And the second issue I want to like explain a bit more is the actual timeline of this. Now, obviously, if you've been watching since part 1, you know that I believe the Digidestined, the O2 cast, were kidnapped a little bit after Digimon Strikes Back. And Digimon Strikes Back takes place 3 months after the defeat of Jesmon. And with Tri, obviously, you know, taking place 6 years after the first adventure, that would be 3 years after O2. So, you know, you take into account the 3-month gap between Jesmon's defeat and Digimon Strikes Back. And that means that the O2 cast have been missing for around 2 years and 9 months in my theory. And obviously in the last video I said that between the point of them getting captured and, you know, Jesmon eventually you know, wanting to like help them and break them out, like, you know, between those 2 times, like I said, it would be about a year. But I had obviously time to think about it, and I think that it would honestly take a bit longer than that to give a figure on how much longer. I think that it wouldn't just be a year. I think it would be a year and 9 months. Because first off, you have to think that the Royal Knights are, you know, very loyal to Yggdrasil. And, like, you know, Jesmon is obviously a Royal Knight, and, like, it would obviously take him, like, you know, some convincing to actually want to help the O2 cast. Especially since, based on the wiki, obviously, Jesmon, ever since he was a rookie Digimon, you know, obviously, his rookie Digimon is, his rookie form is, Hackmon. But, like, if you look at the wiki, like, you know, and it says that, Hackmon, like, you know, ever since, like, he was a rookie, like, you know, he met, Gankumon, you know, his master, and, like, he's always wanted to be a Royal Knight. So, especially with Jesmon, I feel it would take a lot of convincing to get him to join the Digidestined side. And secondly, you also have to keep in mind that this isn't like this isn't like an ordinary, like, you know, prison, like, you know, basically, like, this isn't like an ordinary place where, like, Digimon and people would be kept. Like, this is like Yggdrasil's base. Like, you know, this is gonna be like super tough to like find a way to get them out, you know. Like, it's not like just like, you know, they can open like the cell, like, you know, just go out the front door with like no problem. Like, they'd have to, like, you know, plan like this, like, you know, plan an escape like throughout, like they'd have to, like, you know, get maps of like the whole building, you know, to try and like find a way out, you know. So obviously it would take a lot of planning to actually, you know, try and get the O2 cast out of Yggdrasil's base. So yeah, with I quickly wanted to address those 2 things, and now that I have, let's get into the video. Well, this is the video, but like, let's get into more about what I think happened to the O2 cast. So obviously, during the end of the last video, I was talking about how I believe that Jesmon would eventually help the O2 Digidestined and would eventually try to break them out. And but like, I wasn't really like too detailed in my explanation. Like, you know, I basically gave a summary of it. So in this video, I'm gonna, like, similar to obviously part 1 and part 2, like where part 1, like, you know, I gave Kari's perspective, but like it was very detailed, and part 2 I gave what happened to the O2 cast, and it was very detailed as well. So in this part, I'm gonna go over what I think happened between Jesmon and the O2 cast in a lot of detail. So here we go. So obviously the first time that Jesmon would meet the O2 cast would be after after Alphamon captured them. So, like, you know, they're in their cell, you know, obviously, and Yggdrasil, like, you know, would want someone to obviously watch them and, you know, make sure they don't try, like, you know, anything funny, you know, don't try to escape or anything. And ultimately, like, Jesmon's like say, like, he I think like Jesmon is like a really young Royal Knight, because obviously, he's the student of Gankumon, so he's probably like really young at this. So like, Yggdrasil will probably be like, like since he's a new recruit, like, like you should go and watch the O2 cast, like, as like kind of like, as like for experience, like, so like, he assigns Jesmon to watch over the O2 cast and make sure they don't do anything wrong. And like, Jesmon, like, is watching over them, making sure they don't do anything. And like, they eventually wake up and like they ask where they are, and he tells them they're at Yggdrasil's base. And Yggdrasil, like, asks for them to go and meet him. So Jesmon escorts the Digidestined to meet Yggdrasil. And obviously, the Digidestined have their first encounter with Yggdrasil, where he like tells them like, that he wants them to join his side, but they obviously refuse. So he sends them back to their cell, and Jesmon escorts them back. And it's like from this point on, like, obviously the O2 casts are going to be like, going to be tortured by Yggdrasil. They're going to be like psychologically tortured, like similar to the D Reaper, and like they're going to be overall just tormented, and Yggdrasil is just going to be like trying to like get them to join his side. And so like Jesmon, like he doesn't really pay too much attention to the O2 cast. Like Yggdrasil like told him like don't like don't like listen to the O2 cast, like like trying to say like that the O2 cast like are deceptive, like that the Digidestined are evil, that he like should just basically ignore them and not listen to a word they say. So Jesmon obviously would want to stay true to that. So he obviously like like for like say at the beginning he's just like ignoring them completely, just disregarding them, even if like they're like trying to talk to him, like get some information out of him. And but I think eventually like one day, like say like maybe a month or a few months after like they've been captured, like I think one day like that the O2 cast would be in their jail cell, just like thinking about like just like talking to each other and thinking about everything that's happened. And they try to talk to Jesmon once again, but Jesmon is just ignoring them. And like then like Yoli, I'd say like maybe Yoli or Davis, like they make a comment to like Jesmon saying like how can he work for Yggdrasil, like and like Jesmon obviously like like this like question intrigues him, and he's like, what do you mean how can I work for Yggdrasil? And like Yoli would probably be like what do you mean how can you work for him? Like he's like this horrible like emotionless like a robot, like that doesn't care about like the digital world or like life of any kind, like whether it be human or Digimon. And this obviously like like would probably anger Jesmon, because like he's wanted to be a Royal Knight all his life, and to hear like someone talk bad about his master, the one he's supposed to be following, would obviously anger him. So like he turns like to the Digidestined, and he's like like you don't know the first thing about Yggdrasil, like he's like he's the protector of the digital world, like saying he's the god, he's governed over the digital world for all these years, and we're his like we're his followers, and we've protected the digital world for centuries. And obviously like I could see Davis like after him saying this is like what a load of crap, like because like and he's like all the Digidestined begin chiming in, like saying like really like if like Yggdrasil has been like saying if Yggdrasil has been protecting the digital world for all this time, then where was he when the Dark Masters were attacking? Or where was he when Jesmon began to take over the real and digital world? And like Jesmon is like like he's trying to come up with a reason, like as to like why Yggdrasil like didn't like help during those situations, but like he's not really able to think of it, and he ultimately just says like that those threats were that Yggdrasil like likely deemed them unnecessary, and that like they weren't actual threats. And obviously like the Digidestined are like they're like that's a load of crap, like if it weren't like like that it had ultimately been the Digidestined themselves, like that the original cast defeated the Dark Masters, and that they defeated like Jesmon, like, and if it hadn't been for them, then like the digital world and the real world, both of them would have just been destroyed. So like they was like telling all this to Jesmon, like who like he's like trying to like reason his head around, like trying to think of a reason why Yggdrasil didn't help in those situations, but he can't really think of one. And it eventually gets to a point where like one of the digidestined says, like, say Davis, like he turns to Jesmon and says, like, like, face it, your master is just like, he's not a protector of the digital world, and you're just his puppet. And this obviously, like, angers Jesmon, and like, he's about to attack them, but like then like all of a sudden Jedi appears and he's like, what's going on here, Jesmon? And like, Jesmon turns and he's like, Jedi, like, he's not sure how to answer, and like Jedi is like are the digidestined bugging you, Jesmon? And obviously, like, he's looking like to just like, now that the digidestined have angered Jesmon, like, he's looking to say, like, torture them, like, for like to punish them for doing so. So like Davis, like, he says, like, I was the one who did it. And like, Jesmon's obviously, like, surprised at this. He's like about to like he, obviously Jedi opens the gate, and like he takes Davis and is ready to like just torture Davis. And like, Jesmon's like about to say something, like he like goes like, wait, Jedi, but like, Davis like shoots like this look at Jesmon, like just like this look of like pure determination and like just like pure resolve, like to defend his friends. And like, when Jedi asks him, like, what is it, Jesmon? Like, Jesmon just like stops in his tracks and says, nothing, Jedi. And like, Jedi obviously leaves with Davis, like, to exact like Davis's punishment. So like, Davis eventually comes back, and like the digidestined eventually all fall asleep and like are waiting for the next day. And Jesmon himself is like, he's not now like without anybody like to actually like the digidestined are no longer awake, so like, there's nothing else, like there's no one to talk to, so like he's just like in his own thoughts, and like, he's thinking about everything the digidestined said, and like, no matter what he tries to think, he just like can't think of a reason why like Yggdrasil wouldn't protect the digital world when it was in such danger at those points. And he then like thinks back to Davis, like when he like when Davis like showed him that like look of just like pure determination and resolve to protect his friends, and like that reminds Jesmon of something. Like, it reminds him of his master Gankuman, because obviously before like say before Jesmon became a Royal Knight, he was obviously a rookie Digimon. He's obviously can transform into Hackmon, so like he's probably thinking to like back to a time like when he was training with Gankuman, and obviously he also had two other trainers that helped him, which were Sistermon Nor and Sistermon Blanc. And like, he's probably like thinking back to a day like, when he was training, and like when all of a sudden this evil Digimon suddenly attacked, and he and the two Sistermon were both in danger, and then all of a sudden Gankuman just showed up out of nowhere and protected them. And like, he saw the look in Gankuman's eye when he was protecting them, and it was like a look that was like almost exactly like Davis's. And like, this obviously like confuses Jesmon, because he's like, he's like, to him, like, they're supposed to be like these like horrible like people like who just like brainwash Digimon and use them for their bidding. But like, when Davis like showed that look, like it showed that there was like something more, like it was like that he wanted to protect them. So like, Jesmon's obviously like, having, this is like, I could see this being the point where Jesmon begins to like truly start doubting like Yggdrasil, and like, but like he's like still obviously following Yggdrasil, but this is where he truly begins to have doubts. And after this, like following this, say like a couple of days or maybe a week, I think like, it's just like going on like a normal day basically for Jesmon, when all of a sudden like he hears a familiar voice, and he looks down the corridor and he sees Gankuman and the two Sistermon. So like, he obviously is like, very happy to see them, and he's wondering what they're doing there at Yggdrasil's base. And Gankuman reveals that like, that he just like finished his mission, because you have to keep in mind that obviously the Royal Knights, their Yggdrasil is basically his elite squad, basically. Like, they do what Yggdrasil says. Like, they'd probably go out on missions for him. And or like you could say that maybe that they're also independent, because like we also see like throughout different seasons that the Royal Knights can be independent of Yggdrasil. Like, they can just like go out on their own, like, do their own things. Like, but like, when like push comes to shove, they'll eventually join back with Yggdrasil, like during like times of during very dark times. So yeah, like Gankumon shows up and like explains to Jesmon like that he just got back from finishing his mission, and Gankumon goes to like see Yggdrasil for his next mission. The two Sistermon, they greet Jesmon like who's their former student as well, and like they see the Digidestined, like they're like sizing them up, because obviously they'd probably like have some idea. They'd probably have some idea about who the Digidestined are, like from Gankumon, from Yggdrasil, from Jesmon himself. And like they're like looking at them like just like trying to like figure out like what their deal is basically. And what happens is though is that Gankumon comes back and like he's saying he's off on another mission, and he leaves the two Sistermon there with Jesmon so that they can like obviously help him to escort the Digidestined, and to feed them and all that. So like now the Sistermon are there with Jesmon, and for a while like it's like back to just like the similar old just like Jesmon ignoring the Digidestined and the Sistermon like also doing that. But I think that eventually another thing would happen where it gets up to a point where say one day like after say the Digidestined were being tortured and their Digimon were being tortured, that the Digimon are all like messed up, and they're all being put back into their cells. And I could see like say Sistermon Nor like like maybe making a comment saying like that that the Digidestined must have like brainwashed the Digimon really good to have them like to stick with them for this long, even after all this torture. Now obviously the Digidestined would be very angry at this. They'd be like they'd be like you think we brainwashed them? We didn't brainwash them. They're our friends. And this would obviously probably spark an argument between the Sistermon and the Digidestined, and Jesmon would probably eventually intervene with the whole fight, and he was like saying like stop this at once, and so like they do stop fighting, and like the Sistermon are about to leave when all of a sudden the Digimon begin to like speak, like say Wormmon, and he's like he's saying he's like what our partners are saying is true, like like it's like we're like they're the Digimon begin saying we're not their slaves, we're their partners, we're their friends, we've been with them throughout like all these like great ordeals, and that we become like the best of friends through them, and like eventually like like they say like jump into like the Digidestined's arms, and like obviously the Digidestined and the Digimon then like stare down Jesmon and the Sistermon like to show that that it's more than just like like that the Digidestined are using them, but that they're actually friends. So obviously after this event happens, like I could see something very similar happening again, like where Jesmon was like thinking his own thoughts, but this time it's obviously with the Sistermon, where like all the Digidestined are asleep, and obviously Jesmon and the Sistermon begin like talking with one another. Like Jesmon asks the Sistermon like what do you make of the Digidestined, and like obviously they'd like probably like want to lie at first, like because like they don't want to like insult Yggdrasil or anything. But Jesmon eventually like insists like saying like please like tell me honestly what you think of them, and they begin to explain like like well at first like they thought like the Digidestined were just like these heartless monsters from everything they'd heard, but like now with everything they've seen and everything they've shown, they're like maybe there's like something more to them than they realize, and eventually like they continue discussing this, and eventually gets to a point where Jesmon and the Sistermon decide like that they want to know more about the Digidestined, So obviously after this, say the following day or maybe a couple days later, I think this is where like Jesmon and the Digidestined would truly start to become friends, along with the Sistermon as well. Obviously, like it's just like one day, like everything's just like going on as normal. When Jesmon or one of the Sistermon, they ask the Digidestined like how did you guys become Digidestined, and obviously the O2 cast would be shocked at it. The O2 cast would be shocked at this, and they'd be like, why do you want to know? But like while at first they were reluctant to tell them about anything, eventually like they begin telling them about obviously all their adventures, how they became Digidestined, and ultimately what challenges they had to overcome. Now obviously like say with Ken, like if they were to, they obviously have to explain what happened with Ken, like the the Sistermon and Jesmon would probably be like, skeptical, like saying like, you say you don't enslave Digimon, and yet one of you has done it before. Like, and like obviously like at this point, like say like they told them about the dark spore, but like they're still obviously skeptical. And this would be a point where like Ken himself like speaks up saying like, I'm not denying that I did any of those things, but I can tell you that I have regretted it ever since I became the Digimon Emperor. And ultimately this is where like they truly begin to become friends. The O2 Digidestined and Jesmon and his group, they like truly start to become friends. And, like they begin telling each other like stories about their pasts, like going over personal experiences and all that, and just overall becoming good friends. And obviously like Jesmon and the Sistermon like are like surprised at this, and like they're not sure what to do anymore. Like they don't want to like see the O2 cast be hurt anymore, but they're also like obligated to Yggdrasil. So they're beginning to wonder what they should do, and eventually, like when the Digidestined themselves like are infected with like Yggdrasil's virus, like that's what ultimately is the nail in the coffin for Jesmon and the Sistermon. Like that's when like ultimately they decide like that they need to help the Digidestined. So it's at this point on that Jesmon and the Sistermon begin to devise this plan to get the Digidestined out of Yggdrasil's base and save them, basically. So like they begin like looking throughout the entire base, like panning out like every route they can take, looking for like guard positions, like because like there's probably going to be other royal knights inside there, and like ultimately like coming up with just like this whole plan to try and save the Digidestined, to try and rescue them. And once they've done all this, like they obviously like explain it to the O2 cast as well, like saying like this is what we're gonna do, like to get you guys out of here. And but ultimately like I think there's obviously two big problems with like trying to get them out, because you obviously like have Yggdrasil there, who's gonna be like the major problem, because like he's incredibly strong, like stronger than Jesmon alone can like handle. And like obviously like there's also the Digidevice. There's also the fact that they need to get the Digidevices back for the Digidestined, because like I could like it would probably be very likely that Yggdrasil would keep the Digidestined's Digidevices like somewhere safe, like where they couldn't get to them, like so that they could like fight back. So like they obviously have to get those back too, but like they'd probably be guarded by Overall Knight as well. So like they're like trying to think of ways to like get around Yggdrasil and get the Digidevices still, but like they're like kind of coming up against the wall. And eventually they decide like that they need Gankumon, like they need Gankumon to return. They need his help to help free the Digidestined. So eventually Gankumon returns from one of his missions, and it's at this point where Jesmon and the Sistermon, like they tell him like they want to help the Digidestined, and like while it probably would take some convincing, I think eventually Gankumon would come to their side and would want to help the Digidestined as well. So like now they have Gankumon, which would obviously be a major help, but they still need to come up with a way to deal with Yggdrasil. And eventually like Gankumon like reveals something like that maybe like something like that has to do with Yggdrasil, like that say once every like 10 years or once every century that Yggdrasil needs to like say have a day of rest to like recharge his powers, and that day is coming up very soon, and like that is going to be their best chance to like save the Digidestined and get their Digivices back. So eventually like they decide like that like that's the day we're gonna do it. That's the day we'll like get the Digidestined out of here. We'll get their Digivices back, and we'll save them basically. So like they're all preparing for this. They're all preparing to get the Digidestined out of there, and overall like just save them in general, because like now they're obviously very good friends. And obviously like we have to like obviously discuss like what actually happens like during the plan. But for now, that's going to be the end of this video. So, thank you all for watching. I'm sorry I left it off right here at like a cliffhanger basically. It's just like, again, like this video is getting really long, and I just like, I just really wanted to get this video out. I think I'm happy with the way I handled this video. Like I felt that in part 2 to this, like obviously part 2 to my theory on this, that I kind of rushed through it a bit. Like I feel like I kind of rushed through a bit on this one as well. I feel like this one was a bit more well paced, like it described everything in a lot more detail than my last one did. But overall, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, maybe leave a like, and if you're enjoying the content I'm producing, maybe consider subscribing. And if you're already subscribed to me, then I hope that you continue to enjoy my content. And yeah, if you have any thoughts on the video or on me or just on Digimon or anything in general, make sure to leave them down in the comments below. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching. I am Alejandro Mendoza, and I will see you later. Bye.